We're going to start the meeting. Thanks for your patience. Technical difficulties. We'll open the meeting for Town Plan and Zoning Commission, October 10th meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Secretary, please read the roll, please.
Chairman Aida.
Here.
Commissioner Camillo.
Here.
Commissioner Claffey. Commissioner Fox.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kane.
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski.
Here.
Commissioner Woods.
Here.
Commissioner Vitalico. Commissioner Braverman.
Here. Commissioner
Giangrave.
Okay, we'll have Commissioner Braverman sit in for me on the 550 street projects, two public hearings, and the site plan approval under new business. Approval of the agenda. Turn it over to the Vice Chairman. We got some changes to make to the agenda. We're going to move some stuff around, so it's when we get into 550, we could run the two public hearings and the new business simultaneously. So we want to move the church one up.
So I entertain we move the approval of the minutes of September 26 just after remarks by commissioners. And under public hearings, I'd make C, A, and then make A, B, and B, C.
I'm just going to move the church place of worship on Berlin Turnpike up to the first spot. That shouldn't take too long, and then we could take the other three items simultaneously, and I won't have to jump back in and out of the hearing.
Mr. Chairman, we also have, the town planner would like to add some things under petitions for public hearing scheduling, and it's in our packet that he's given us. So I would recommend adding that to the agenda too.
That's under, there's an item already on there for scheduling.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on the changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next item, please have the public participation. Anyone wishing to speak at this time from the public? Okay, seeing none. Zoning enforcement officers report.
I think the commission members got a copy of last month's report, so if anybody has any questions on it, I'll try to answer them. At the moment, as you know, we're in the process of hiring a new CEO, so we've been doing some zoning enforcement work by myself. We hired a temporary person to fill in for the next week or so, and she started last week, so she did some work over the weekend. But I'll try to answer any questions that members may have about the report that you got from last month.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the planner whether or not he ever got back to the company on the Berlin Turnpike, Spook Town or Spooky, whatever, because they were supposed to remove pennants, if I'm correct, and then I find that they're still up, and they added some small signs to the property.
Well, I did speak to the manager after speaking to you, and I pointed out to her that the pennants had to go. And I asked the acting temporary CEO to go to Spooky Town over the weekend and talk to the manager to remind her that her permit is only good for 25 days and to confirm whether she'd removed the pennants. And I got a report from the acting CEO when I came in on Tuesday, but I haven't had a chance to look at it in preparing for this meeting. So it is definitely on our radar,
Okay.
Spooky Town.
Anyone else? Anything for the planner or the CEO? You could see now as a commission, you could see on the Turnpike and some of the other areas where stuff starts to slide when the zoning enforcement officer isn't on staff working to check all these things. You could I could see it just driving down the turnpike. There's additional signs up, and people take advantage of it. So as soon as we get somebody hired, we'll bring them into the commission, and we'll have a discussion as to what we expect from them. Any questions, other questions for the? Okay, seeing none. Remarks by commissioners at this time, anything? No. Approval of minutes of September 26th. Shall I get a chance to
Make a
read?
motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any corrections, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that brings us into public hearings. We'll have the secretary read the, got the,
Petition
procedure.
3818.
You gotta read it first.
Oh, public procedure.
The order of proceedings at a public hearing shall be as follows. A, convening by a chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, a statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by the applicant limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition to the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitations should be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall an extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
Okay, please read 3818 petition, item C.
Petition 38-18, special permit section 3.2.1, church or place of worship at 2175 Berlin Turnpike. IBNP, One Nation in Christ, applicant, Kidco Property LLC, owner, Ruben Ascensios, 727 Maple Street, Weathersfield, Connecticut. Contact.
Is the applicant here or his representative? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Make your presentation, please.
Mr. Chairman, are you going to turn it over to Mr. Payne?
No, you're not up yet.
We changed this.
You're, unless you're representing the church too, Mr.
Had a
Hollister.
representative. Good evening.
Hi. Why don't you tell us what you plan on doing there? We know that this piece of property has been a church in the past, and they vacated the property. They moved to the Shriners, and they're doing their services there. So we're familiar with the piece of property, and we're familiar with, but if you have a presentation, please make it.
Yeah, good evening, first of all. Thank you. It was the Mill Pond Church that was there, and from speaking to the owner of the Kidco properties, they vacated, I believe, November of last year. The property's been vacant. Nothing's changed in there. He put it up for lease. We ran into it. We don't look to make any change except throwing maybe some fresh paint on the walls, and pretty much want to use it for the same use as them without any alterations to the property. I believe we're a smaller congregation than they are, so we don't have any other issues other than that.
On the, during the week, you have services during the week or Bible studies?
As of right now, we are in a school in Hartford, so we basically just have our Sunday services. We have home fellowships during the week, so they're done in members' homes.
And that's all done at night, right?
Done at nighttime, correct?
Doesn't conflict with Kidco's operation daytime?
Not at all. No, if we do anything during the week, if we've done anything, it's been around 7, 8 o'clock at night. Lasts about an hour, hour and a half.
Okay.
And
What about signage?
speaking to the owner, we're not putting any signage out on up on the street or anything like that. We're only authorized to put exactly where Mill Pond used to have theirs that was removed, which is right above the door. We haven't applied for a permit yet. We haven't put a sign yet, but when we do, that's where we'll be putting it.
Mr. Planner, they do not have to come back if they comply with the zone, with the signage, right?
Right, wall signage is approved by staff.
Okay. So you, when you're ready and you have your signage, bring it into,
Definitely. And I'm not sure if this may be possible, but due to the fact that it's pretty much keeping the same nature of what it was before, we're just asking pretty much for approval to be given to our church name, our congregation, rather than Mill Pond. We are renting from the city of Hartford right now, and I believe the response dates for these hearings are usually on the 26th. By the time they've given me to let them know that we're moving out, I would be paying November rents there. I didn't know if there would be a possibility to vote on this during this hearing.
we'll see what the public has to say, and then we'll take it into consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Okay, you could sit down, we'll ask the public to comment, and then we'll have the commissioners. There any questions for the applicant from the commissioners at this time? It's pretty cut and dry. It's just a replacement of a church. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of this application, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Anyone in opposition? Seeing none. Commissioners, what would you like to do? Would you see any problems moving this? Commissioner Fox?
Well, I see no problems. I don't know if the planner has drafts a suggested motion or not, but not in a rush, then let's close it and wait till the next meeting, unless you want to just put together.
No, he's looking for an answer, Michael. So
Yeah,
why
let's
don't you
see.
close it and move it to
I
old business?
mean, we close it, we move it to old business for tonight.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any comments from the commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to act on it tonight under old business, and we'll make a determination. Okay, that ends that petition. I'm going to turn the meeting over to the vice chairman for the next three items. You're on, Mr. Hollister.
Now, Coach, now?
Sorry.
There you go, Stan.
Okay, if I could have the secretary read petition 24-18, 25-18, and 26-18.
Petition 24-18 zoning text amendment, new section 3.26, workforce assisted housing district. In accordance with Connecticut General Statute, section 8-30G, Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut, contact continued from September 26, 2018. Petition 25-18, zoning map amendment at 550 Cedar Street, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, section 8-30G, Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant 550 Cedar Street Associates, LLC, owner Timothy S. Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut, contact continued from September 26, 2018. Where's 26?
That's fine right now. We don't have to read the 26-18, and if something comes up under it, we've been talking about it, and then we'll address that under new business afterwards. You can begin, Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. Tim Hollister representing the applicant. With me are Mark Pillett from Dakota, Mr. Walter and Mr. Ullman from Benish and Company, and Bob Bristol from Geo Insight. The materials that I just gave you, I think I saw in the package that you got from Mr. Minor, so it may be duplicate. It might, what I gave you has a color cover and also has tabs, so it may be a little easier to work with in the copy, but it looks like you have a duplicate. There are two questions remaining, I hope only two, but The first one is Commissioner Woods had asked for our estimate of what percentage of residents in the proposed development will have their own cars. And I put together a short response at tab 2, but basically our response is, if you want to put a number on it, at least 90%, which another way to say that is we do not expect there will be very many residents who will not have a car. There are some people who don't drive, there are some people who can't drive, there are some people who rely on friends, relatives, Uber, Lyft, ride sharing services, but based on our discussions with other similar properties, that was the estimate that we came up with. So that's the best we can do.
Thank you.
Now to the more complicated issue. As you may have seen, Police Chief Clark issued a memo on October 3rd asking for information about the average number of police calls from 3 properties two in Massachusetts, 1 in Brookfield, Connecticut, that are developed by Dakota and now managed by Hall Keen, which is the property management company. And you recall earlier he had asked if there was a management policy that had automatic disqualifier of tenancy from anyone with a criminal record or a conviction, and we produced that, and that is absolutely the case. And I think I can say that he is satisfied with that. However, another issue that came up at 3:40 this afternoon was whether we had totally responded to his inquiry. Now, I will tell you, if you look at tab 1 of what I gave you tonight, I'll just walk you through what we did respond to, which we thought was, he asked for an understanding of the statistics. So the first part of our response was to point out that, number one, police calls as a statistic don't reflect criminal activity. It's not as though each time the police department is called, there's something criminal or potentially criminal that happened on the property, because there can be calls for medical transports, conditions not related to a crime, any number of reasons. Number two, and this is a response that we found actually is applicable to 2 of the 3 properties that he inquired about, calls can spike due to one particular incident. There could be multiple calls from multiple residents all relating to the same incident, or there can be a condition of the property that takes days or weeks to rectify. So, for example, in the case of Whitman Woods, which is in Tingsboro, Massachusetts, we verified that there was a spike in calls in July of 2017 due to fireworks on an adjacent property. And then there was also an issue, apparently the dumpster at this property is large and is visible from the street, and there were instances of people illegally dumping their own trash into this dumpster. Police calls, again, nothing to do with activity on the property. In addition, we point out that sometimes police calls are because the neighbors, the residents are vigilant as to what's going on in the neighborhood. Now, this is not applicable to this application, but I handled one in the city of Stamford a couple years ago where there was a huge number of police calls, and it was because the residents had formed a crime watch, and that there were a lot of calls, but it was probably the safest neighborhood in the city of Stamford because of that activity. So we had those general comments about police call statistics. Then I pointed out in my response that Hall Keen manages 9,300 units from Maine to Florida. And so politely, I questioned the chief on identifying 3 developments that are managed by Hall Keen. We don't know exactly how those were selected, but we pointed out that in general, to take the police call ratio from 3 properties and to suggest that that would be predictive, of calls that will occur from the Cedar Street development, much less some issue about public safety, just seemed too many levels out of speculation that didn't seem appropriate. The other thing, 2 other things that we provided in our tab 1 response. One is a an email from the Vice President of Residential Management for Holkeen, who specifically points out it is company policy for all of Holkeen's property managers to work, to partner with local police departments and make sure that, that the properties are well-run and safe. And then finally, something that you already had, but maybe the police chief had not seen, was back when we filed our original application, I gave you an excerpt from a National Crime Prevention Council report from 2004, which actively endorses the development of workforce housing because it has the effect of stabilizing neighborhoods. So the development of this kind of housing sometimes can be an actual deterrent to police calls and criminal activity and can stabilize neighborhoods. So, so we provided that response, and then late this afternoon, the chief responded to Mr. Minor, and Mr. Minor passed that along to me and said that that we had not, the information we presented was not anecdotal, was anecdotal, and he wanted to see the breakdown of call types and more than general information about calls for service. You know, he'd asked for an explanation. We thought we provided it. You know, we were sort of left 2 or 3 hours ago, you know, with what do we do to be responsive to his inquiry. Obviously, from day one, we have tried to work with the town and the town staff, but in his emails that went back and forth between Mr. Minor and the chief and myself, I said, well, look, you know, we were in a position to close the hearing tonight. There were no other issues. I would suggest now, you know, this could be handled as a condition of approval that the applicant agrees to work with, or the Holkeen management will work with the police department to make sure there's an appropriate, you know, observation of any criminal activity. I would also point out that back in September, we accepted, Mr. Minor made some very astute suggestions about safety features within the complex. We accepted every single one of those. And you know, again, we had responded to the police chief on the automatic disqualifiers. So anyway, the last communication, and I'm gonna pass this out just so you have the actual wording, and I'm not presuming to speak for the police chief, but you know, I said, look, we are under a time constraint in that Dakota's plan is to get its application in for funding by October 31st. And I said, okay, look, to the chief, you know, we want to continue to work with the town staff. And so if you insist, we will be willing to extend this hearing one more time. We don't want to do this, but if he demands it, we will, to the 24th, 2 weeks from now. But it would be with the condition that whatever the police department comes up with, we would like it in our hands by the close of business on Friday the 19th, so we have time to look at it. I told the chief that we would totally cooperate in making sure that he gets the information that even it's from local police departments that he's looking for. But I said that, and then this commission would need to understand that you know, we will need a vote that night in order to be able to have time to prepare our funding application. Let me also say that, as an aside, that no one should think that if Dakota doesn't make the October 31st deadline, that this project is going away. There's way too much already invested. You know, we've got, except for final approval from this commission, you know, we've gotten approvals right down the line. Mr. Walter met with the town engineer this afternoon. They ironed out all the remaining technical issues. So no one should think that if we just delay this past October 31st, that this application goes away. That is not the case. But the last thing I want to point you to is in the emails exchange that I just passed out. If you look at Chief Clark's email to me in the middle of the page, he says, and I'm quoting from the middle sentences, I, meaning Police Chief Clark, asked if there were definite criminal disqualifiers, and I was told there were, which satisfied me in that regard. I only wanted to understand what is causing what appears to be a high amount of calls for service. I was hoping for more detailed information. As always, The police department remains neutral on projects such as this and relies on our elected and appointed officials to make policy decisions for the town. So while he's requesting this information, the chief is not taking a position on the application. So that's, with apologies for my sort of long-winded remarks tonight, I guess where we are is our strong preference is to close the hearing and ask you to make a decision. We believe that, that we've cooperated and done everything that we can do as an applicant. We think we've given you a good proposal by a quality applicant. That said, as one last measure of cooperation with the town staff, if the commission wishes to continue the hearing to October 24th, we will not object to that, but for the sole purpose of giving the police department essentially 9 days in which to pull together whatever additional statistics they would like to look at, and I'll reiterate the applicant's willingness to cooperate and assist them and make sure they get a timely response. But we don't want to get it on the morning or the afternoon of the 24th and then not have everybody have time to read it. So that is where we are, and I will stop there. Sorry for my long-winded remarks.
Okay, it's a public hearing. Before I go into the public hearing, I'll go to the staff and see if the town planner has anything on this.
I have nothing in addition to the material that I passed out earlier this evening.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any questions on what Attorney Hollister has just reviewed with us? Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through you, to Attorney Hollister, I for one do appreciate the fact that you're willing to extend the public hearing part of this till October 24th. And because for one thing, I'm sure everybody else does. I have plenty of notes that I wanted to go through tonight. And I don't even know if I would be able to contain it with all the other notes to just this one meeting. So that I appreciate that. But I don't know if I'm right on this, Mr. Planner. We actually can't vote. We cannot vote, make a motion on this until the hearings and the site plan hearings are closed. Is that correct?
That's correct. You cannot vote until the hearings are closed.
And we can't really discuss among ourselves until that motion is made. Is that correct?
Well, it's
We have to, that was one of the problems I have, is that by keeping this open, we're limited to just the next meeting to talk about it and come up with our concerns, and then having the attorney answer our concerns, hopefully. I was hoping that we could close this meeting so that we could get into a discussion about what items, if any, safety items, substantial safety items that the commission is concerned about, so that it gives the attorney a chance to make some final answers on them. And then we have next meeting also, if he wants to come in with his timeline of October 31st. So I don't know whether or not it's necessary to keep it open for the additional facts on the chief's concern. You got to remember some of that stuff. You're not comparing. You're comparing Newington to 3 other towns, and what's the makeup of each one of those towns? How many citizens are there? What is the makeup of it? And then you're trying to compare that to the makeup of Newington. It's totally different. And if I'm not mistaken, we have, if a property becomes a nuisance because of crime, we have state statutes and town statutes and things in our charter to address that. And so I don't know if you can really presume something is going to be full of crime and and have that without the facts. how does the commissioners feel about leaving it open? Or, I'd like to be able to close it so we can have a discussion about it after we hear from the public. But if you feel that you want to hear additional information on that subject, then I guess we'll have to leave it open.
Well, I, for one, Mr. Chairman, think we do need at least another meeting to discuss this, make the motions and discuss this, and not make a decision at least until the 24th. I don't know, whichever is better for everyone all around, and especially whichever option we choose, whether we close tonight or extend to next, is the best for the town itself. As far as comparing Newington to other towns, I have to agree. I mean, a lot of people, in a lot of dealings that we do, and people talk about social media and otherwise, we are being, we're being compared to a number of other places. And this is Newington, and even to compare us to, let's say, Wethersfield or Berlin, this is still Newington and not any of the other towns. So I feel that whatever decisions we do make and whatever comments we make, have got to be apropos to Newington.
So do you want to keep it open, or do you want to close the public hearing on these later? Let's not make that decision now, because we still have to hear from the public.
Right.
Is there any other questions? Okay, we're
Mr.
going
Chairman, can I just throw out just one housekeeping thing? Nobody likes extra meetings, but you do have the option of, if the chief is able to deliver his report on Friday, by close of business Friday, I think it was the 19th, you could have a special meeting on Monday or Tuesday, just thinking out loud here, to then close the hearing on that Monday or Tuesday, close the hearing, discuss it that night, and then have your regular meeting on the 24th, where this would be on the agenda for more discussion and a decision at that point. Just throwing that out as an option.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to the public, since it's a public hearing.
And what Mr. Minor suggested is fine with us.
Okay. So anybody from the public, I believe our economic developers here, I'll invite him up.
Good evening. My name is Andy Brecker, and I'm appearing before you tonight in my official capacity as the Economic Development Director for Newington. Normally, I speak without referring to a written text, just speak from notes, but for purposes of efficiency, I'll read my statement tonight. While Newington already has plenty of affordable housing, I agree that our community lacks new quality housing with market rate amenities that is affordable. Therefore, I am a proponent of better affordable housing, whether or not it is an 8-30G project. But I am opposed to the Dakota Partners project for the following 5 reasons. 1, Cedar Street is a main commercial thoroughfare, so retail should be included with residential, as Dakota's Columbus Square project in New Britain has, and as Dakota proposed for the National Welding site. And, as a competitor, Penrose Partners included in its Meriden Commons project. 2, frankly, this plan is ugly and wastes land. Dakota has built lovely apartments throughout New England with attractive facades and interesting roof lines. Columbus Commons features 2 6-story buildings, creating a compact neighborhood with room left over for other uses. All are superior to what is being proposed for our community. 3, the applicant admits materials and amenities meet minimum standards. The town planner made nearly 40 suggestions to do better that received only scant attention. The siding is vinyl, not brick, not even hardy plank. We asked for concrete sidewalks. The architect said they'll be bituminous concrete. Trust me, we know the difference. Finishes like plywood cabinetry, granite counters, tile baths, wood or pergo floors, 5-inch MDF millwork, and wood closet shelving should be included. The areas are so small, the incremental cost, frankly, is negligible. 4, the applicant has stated all units will be built the same, with no discrimination between those charged market rates versus those being discounted. But what is it about this project that will attract market rate renters? The units are nothing special. They will not be beautiful, as the architect maintains. They look cheap because they are cheap. And who puts laundries in the basements these days? If the point of this project is to provide market-rate housing at affordable prices, it is a huge fail. And 5, I don't understand why Dakota is targeting such a low AMI, lower than their other projects. With 25% of the units targeted to 30% AMI and only 25% market rate units to offset, I don't see how the project will produce enough cash reserves for the extensive maintenance that will be required in a few short years because of the low-end materials being utilized. It would make more sense for half the units to be market rate with the other half affordable units at a mix of 50 to 60% AMI. 8-30G virtually assures Dakota can build whatever they want at 550 Cedar Street, but I urge them not to do so. This is not a project that Newington can be proud of. Perhaps more importantly, this project does a disservice to the residents that might live there. I urge Dakota to rethink their approach, withdraw their applications, and resubmit a plan for housing that anyone would want to live in, one that would be an asset for Newington. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anybody wishing to speak in favor, please come forward, state your name for the record.
Commissioners, Kyle Barrett, 49 Ellsworth Street. So I think as got brought up tonight, just kind of in regards, wanted to touch base on kind of the criminalization or the crime aspect, and just wanted to say that I know the commission deals exclusively with zoning issues, but I just feel like much of what has flavored the conversation in and outside of this meeting has related to what our notions are of the folks that are going to be moving in here. And just wanted to say that those that are going to move in here are not criminals. And I think the questions that have been brought up around kind of criminal backgrounds and criminal background checks, I'm not sure if they would come up if it was a high-end development or a new condominium complex. But statistically, renters in affordable housing are no more likely to commit crimes than those that live in other apartments that are rented out in Newington and across the country. And the fact is that people that live in affordable housing are not there because they have criminal records and can't find other housing, and because they're lazy and don't try as hard the rest of us. People live in affordable housing because many jobs in the state and our economy as a whole do not provide living wages to pay for skyrocketing in housing costs. My family moved into affordable housing because my dad continually was laid off in the 80s during manufacturing being shipped out of the country. And many folks that live in affordable housing now are pushed there by unemployment and other factors that are out of their control. A quick glance at the average salaries of folks in Newington reveals that most of the apartments in this development, including those that are most affordable, are still going to be available to folks such as daycare providers, teachers' aides, and food service providers. So the reality is that folks that are going to move into these apartments are people that we see and interact with on a daily basis and play an important role in our community. They take care of our children and our aging family members. They check our temperature and blood pressure when we go into the doctor's office. They cook and stock our food, and they help our kids at school. They pick up our children and drive them home safely every day. And to be clear, as was alluded to before, this is a mixed income apartment, a mixed income development, so there will be mixed rates there. And looking at the proposed prices, the people that will live here will span from young insurance workers to teachers to healthcare providers to food service workers and caregivers to retired citizens. So I think to try and put some reality on the face of those that are going to be living here, you know, it's not folks that are looking to commit crimes, that are lazy, or that are here just trying to take off the system. It's individuals and families that have the same desires that we all do, that they want a comfortable house to come home to and a community where they feel like they can be successful and their children can thrive. And I think that's why I moved here, and I hope that we can extend that opportunity to folks by supporting the development as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anybody else wishing to speak in favor? Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
John Bachon, 56 Maple Hill Avenue. I sent a letter in. I don't know if everybody received it. Thank Thank you, Craig. I'm not going to read it. I just want to make sure it is going to be a permanent part of the record, because there's some information in there that I think is important. I just want to say, I'll start off with Mr. Brecker's comments. I was somewhat surprised. He's usually all in on almost any kind of development, but unfortunately, his concerns are exactly the discretionary things you don't have much control over that 830G speaks to, that you are obligated to accept. But if you read my letter, as far as the safety concerns go, and I agree with you, I don't know if there's any reason to keep this meeting open, because all this other minutia is, it just melts away when you take into account the unavoidable, unabated safety concerns. And I think that the town attorney addressed that best in just a simple sentence. I just want to go on to say that I have respect for the applicants. They've earned my respect for their diligence and their efforts. But I think that this was a misconceived or ill-conceived project from the beginning. The town planner, I may have been a little critical of him in my letter, but I didn't mean to be, just pointing something out. That this narrative of the burden of proof and the obligation to approve, I keep hearing it over and over and over again. And it's true, the applicant is afforded a lot of latitude in that area. They could build their case on that. But the one thing that you didn't hear from the attorney is any way of addressing that safety concern, and that is the pedestrian access. On my street, everyone comes and goes from their properties. They walk down their driveways, go on the sidewalk, and go wherever to go. I ride bikes. My kids ride bikes. I see my neighbors coming and going constantly. So without that being able to be addressed, I think this is, it's impossible to approve. And again, Attorney Ancona spelled that out, that is the area that you don't lose your discretion on that. And matter of fact, that's your first charge, basically, is public safety. And that's my concern here, too. So, you know, just wanted to make that clear. I guess I could read I'm not going to read any of it. You guys read it?
Want to read it? You can read it.
Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I was just going to read the closing comment.
Okay.
And that is, and this goes to this, it's almost like a bullying, you know, of this commission. I've heard that, if we don't approve it, we're going to be litigated against, we're going to be going to court. I'll just read this closing comment. In closing, I would suggest that the only burden here lies with the commission to justify an approval of the riskiest housing application one could imagine. For it is a far greater leap of faith to approve this application in hopes that no one is ever seriously injured as a result of placing those many lives in harm's way, as opposed to a denial and the concerns of an appeal by the applicant. Keep in mind the burden is indeed squarely on the applicant at that point. To be so bold as to file an appeal and argue in their own interests, despite record knowledge that they were unable to address the safety concerns and the best interests of those they would place in such a hazardous living arrangement. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else wishing to speak in opposition? Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, I'll turn it back over to the applicant to address whatever he'd like to address.
I'm, along with everybody sitting with me, I'm just kind of stunned by the Economic Development Director's comments. We met with him in August, and I had the impression that he was supportive of our plan. This is the first I've heard otherwise. But two things that he said that are not correct. He said that we had essentially ignored the requests and suggestions from Mr. Minor about amenities and levels of quality. I think the record shows that we accepted just about every one, and that you have that in written form in your record. Don't take my word for it. We accepted those. We went right down the line, and we were very proud that we were able to do so. You know, you've seen the materials, you've seen the architecture. Cheap is just not a word that is applicable here. He also asked, you know, why are we aiming at a low area median income? Remember, the range that we spelled out in the first hearing is between $20,000 and $65,000 per year, and that is the requirement of the financing program. It's not something we made up. If we're going to do this with the assistance of the Connecticut Housing Finance Agency, we have to meet their requirements, and we're very upfront about that from day one. So he's misinformed on two very important matters, and again, I'm just kind of amazed at 180 that he did. As far as Mr. Bashan's question, pedestrian safety, we've agreed to do sidewalks. If we could do more, if we had had a reason and the ability to extend the sidewalks several thousand feet on east or west, we would do that. But we don't even have the legal ability to do that. So we agree to put in sidewalks on our frontage, and otherwise we tell people not to walk in the streets where it's illegal or unsafe. I don't know what else we can do about pedestrian safety. You know, we are entitled to a presumption that people will walk in a way that safeguards their own safety, and that there's nothing more to say about that. So that's all I can respond to at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions? Yeah, yes, there is rebuttal. One minute, John. Okay, rebuttal by the opposition. Go ahead, John.
So Attorney Hollister makes the case for you when he says that there's nothing they can do. And that was exactly the way that Attorney Ancona spelled it out, too. The fact that they cannot ameliorate or eliminate the risk within your, in other words, you cannot condition the approval on them putting sidewalks down Cedar Street or across 3 private properties. That, to me, that's the pivotal point of the entire case. So he's basically admitting that they can't. Again, I feel sorry for them to be in this position. I don't think it was a proper place for this to begin with. So again, you cannot condition it, and I'll just read Attorney Ancona's words on that. If I can find it here. Sorry. Therefore, if there were a substantial health and safety risk that a developer cannot reasonably eliminate or ameliorate within the confines of state law, then such a risk may defeat a 830G application. And I went on to write, this is also self-evident. The developer cannot ameliorate the serious safety issues within the confines of the parcel for which they have control over. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners' comments on leaving the public hearing open or closing it? Yes, Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Acting Chairman. Through the Chairman, Mr. Town Planner, if we do close the hearing this evening for the purpose of hearing discussion and eventually and making a motion, will we still be able to speak to Chief Clark's comments and any comments that he is in the process of making right through to October 19th?
Right. My recommendation would be not to receive Chief Clark's report after you close the hearing, because the applicant will not have the ability to rebut what's in Chief Clark's memo. And in my opinion, that would be unfair to the applicant. But it's your decision whether you want to close the hearing or not. But my position always is not to accept even staff comments after the hearing is closed.
Okay. And now, if we leave this open, Attorney Hollister, we have petition 26-18, which is the site plan. Now, there could be some safety concerns that the commissioners have that relate to the site plan. Do you have a problem with us leaving the hearing open, but going into the site plan and having a discussion with the commission on if there's any major safety issues or anything?
No, we're willing to do that.
Okay. All right. So if it's okay with all the commissioners, we'll leave this public hearing open, and I'll have the secretary read the next petition, which is petition 26-18.
Petition 26-18, site plan approval at 550 Cedar Street, Cedar Point. In accordance with Connecticut General Statutes, Section 8-30G, Dakota Partners, Inc., applicant Stop and Shop Supermarket Company, LLC, owner Timothy Hollister, 1 Constitution Plaza, Hartford, Connecticut, contact.
Okay, thank you. I'll have the attorney, if you have some things you'd like to add first on the site plan, if you have anything else that you'd like to talk about before we go to the commissioners.
Yeah, the only thing I would comment with regard to the plan as a whole, if you look at the very last tab, tab 6 of what I passed out tonight, it suggested reasons for approval, which is basically all the things about the development plan summarized from 4 previous sessions of the hearing. We modified the architecture. The interior amenities that were requested by town staff, we accepted. As of today, the town engineer's comments have been accepted, and Mr. Walter and Mr. Furstenberg have an agreement. The parking ratio exceeds the ITE standards and is comparable to your existing regulations. You have the soil remediation plan, which is going to take a contaminated site in the commercial, near the commercial center of Newington, and turn it into a clean and property tax generating property. We've agreed to modify the traffic light operation as the police chief requested several weeks ago. You're going to get a conservation easement expanded as requested by the Conservation Commission. We have a consensus planting and landscaping plan. Please remember that previously the police department and the fire department had reviewed the site plan and they had no objections. You have that in writing in your materials from several meetings ago. The proposed workforce housing will meet a substantial need. This applicant has a proven track record of successful construction and management. We have Conservation Commission approval, and we did agree to install the sidewalks along the frontage. And just not to beat a dead horse, but the comment that was just made that we are agreeing that there's a pedestrian safety problem. No, we're doing everything that we can do with regard to pedestrians, but we're going to tell them not to walk down the middle of Cedar Street during rush hour. I think the pedestrians know that without us even telling them. So anyway, I don't know that that's a safety problem that is created or can be addressed any more than we've addressed it. So that's all I have.
All right, we'll go to commissioners. Commissioner, yep.
Hollister, what do you do in the wintertime when there's snow and people have to get out? How do they walk down? If they can't walk on the street, where are they going to walk? I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, well, I think this is the part and parcel of what Commissioner Woods was asking. If someone needs to walk to the center of town, this is probably not a place they're going to live. They're going to have a car, or they're going to have to rely on friends, neighbors, ride-sharing services. There are some developments, such as this one, that are not conducive to people who don't have transportation. That's a simple fact. But that's not a reason to make it, it doesn't make it unsafe.
Well, we agreed to disagree at that point.
Okay.
That's all I'm
Well,
saying.
are you referencing the walking, basically? I think he's referencing not walking to the center of town, but walking to the busway, which
Busway.
this project is being put in basically close to the busway. It's a very close distance. And I think that's the safety concern, is having a safe means of walking down to National Welding property. It's over the state property. We know it's not your property, but there's really not a substantial cost on putting it in. And it comes down to the opinion of the commissioners on how they feel of a safety problem it is. I think since you're gearing this to affordable and workforce housing, that you're encouraging them to use the busway. And I think that it has to have a safe means of access down to the next property. Unfortunately, the state has the property.
And we couldn't agree more. And I think we said on the record, I believe it was on September 12th, we're ready, willing, and able to cooperate with the state of Connecticut, with the town of Newington, to get sidewalk access in whatever direction is feasible, physically and financially and legally feasible. We don't control that property. If the state, we're willing to cooperate to get that done, absolutely. I said that already.
Would it be possible for you to do a little bit of homework on that to see if that's possible, that we could, I think that would make the commissioners feel a lot better if we could get a sidewalk going down to the busway. The other concern I have, I don't know about the commissioners, is a safe means of getting the bus pickup off the road a little bit. That area of the road is extremely dangerous, and I think that if you could work with the staff and the school department to come up with some sort of where they can pull in and they can pick up and then get back to the light somehow, that works with them. I'm not sure why they can't go down the property, since a fire engine can go in there and then turn around and come back up. I don't understand why they can't do that, and maybe the staff and along with you can work on that. I feel those are my two biggest concerns, and now I'm going to go to the commissioners and see what their concerns are for substantial safety that needs to be addressed.
Mr. Chairman, we asked, Mr. Ullman behind me had extensive conversations with the school district. They said they will not send their buses onto private property. We can't tell them what to do. They said they wouldn't do that. So the next answer, which I believe was endorsed by Mr. Deans of the school department, was to put a bus stop along our frontage, which is what we can do. As remember also, there's plenty of other places on Cedar Street where buses stop that appear to be no different than ours. So
Okay.
again,
one last look
So-
at it, and I'd like to have the staff talk to the school department to find out what happens on drop-off. What are they doing? I want to know the procedure for pickup and drop-off from the school department. Maybe even have them come in so that a representative is here so that we can ask them questions. Because I find it impossible that they're going to drop off across a lane and make the kids walk over the lanes. They must have to go in the same direction, I'm assuming, but nobody said anything.
I did have a conversation with the administration after your last hearing. So maybe if you ask me a specific question, I can tell you what was said about some specifics.
So how would the drop-off work?
Well, the school bus would be westbound, the north side, and the administration is still deliberating whether it would be better for the bus to stop west of the driveway, which has the traffic light, or east, but there are pros and cons to both approach. Something that the administration told me, which I wasn't aware of before, is one of their concerns with having school bus service to 550 Cedar Street, as opposed to elsewhere on Cedar Street, where the buses already stop to pick up and drop off kids, is from 550, there's no way for the bus to turn around to come back into town other than going all the way up to Fenn Road, and there's nowhere to turn around. So that was one of their logistics concerns, but not a safety concerns. But I just wanted to throw that out there. But that's what the bus would do. It would have to pull over on the north side. The stop signs would deploy. Traffic would be stopped in both directions. And yes, it would be inconvenient, but that's the way it would have to work. The administration is not at this time open to the idea of having a school bus going onto the property.
Not even in the front of the property at all? Because he had a little sketch at one time that showed a means to come in and then be able to exit out at the light.
Right, the sketch that Mr. Giacomowitz did. We didn't specifically talk about that as an option, so I don't know whether that's impossible or just not desirable.
As you remember, that was before we moved the building. That was
that's
building A is now where he had sketched it out. So we did that for the Conservation Commission, and that took that option off the table. So,
Commissioners, you have any questions? Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all due respect, Counselor, as far as the sidewalks are concerned, we have been discussing them, I think, ever since the first meeting at August 8th, and that we would have liked passable sidewalks
west as far as we can go to get to the busway, and east, so people, whether they own cars or not, that they really, if they want to go shopping, if they want to go to Dunkin' Donuts, if they want to use a convenience store, and yeah, even if if they want to maybe sit down and have a cocktail at the bar, they're going to use sidewalks. And so that's what we feel, that's the only safe way for the people that are going to be residents there to live a full life. And we've been discussing this since August 8th. And I don't know, we would hope that you would be trying to make talk to the state, to owners of the other properties, and it doesn't seem like you have. As I said, no offense. As far as the school bus stop, and at my house, which is on the corner of Main Street and New Britain Avenue, my granddaughter, who goes to John Wallace Middle School, is picked up right at the driveway, heading west. Dropped off at the same place, because they just make a nice little turnaround, very neat, well planned. You can't do that on Cedar Street, as we have just said. If a school bus is to stop there to pick up or discharge customers, it has to have a way to safely, get back into town, or back into their route, or back to the garage. There is no way to do that, and even if that building had not been moved west, I think Mr. Giacomo's plan is good that he was thinking of it, but I still don't think that's the plan. When a school bus is stopped there, even if there was a cutout for the bus to use to discharge passengers, you've got another 2 lanes in the same direction, traveling at 50 miles an hour, as illegal as it is. And traveling at that speed, when it's that busy, you're going to get a lot of cars passing it. I mean, it might even require a police officer there for a stop. And you mentioned that at other places along Cedar Street there is a bus stop. That's not this section. This section between Alumni Road and the entrance ramp to Route 9 on East Street in New Britain is the busiest part of Cedar Street, of Route 75, and I think including the intersection of Main Street and Cedar Street, East Cedar Street. So this is really an entirely different, unique situation than we've had, with any other development. And so if. I'll give up after that, since we're only talking about safety. I have other comments to make, but that we can do later. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Commissioner Sobieski.
I'm not sure if I should bring this up here now or not, but I was curious. I looked at the plans. I didn't see any downspouts or gutters on the building. Are there any?
Yeah, there's going to be downspouts and internal radiators. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
There will be both.
Well, so they're going to be going down into the ground, and that's going to be going into the detention in the back?
It will not be dumping onto the ground. It'll be going pipe below.
Okay. One other quick question. The pitch of the roof, what happens when snow starts melting and it comes
Excuse
flying off?
me, could you come up and state your name for the record so we have
No,
everything on the record, please? If
easier
he's
that
going to
way.
ask you more questions. Thank you.
Will Walter, professional engineer with Alpha Burnett and Company, for the record.
Thank you.
My question is because of the pitch of the roof, when snow melts and slides off and it's going to fly down, I didn't see any cleats up there to stop it from trying to keep it in place. I was just thinking, for safety. I know my house, when it gets a lot of snow and starts melting and slides right off, that thing flies down. And you're talking 40 some odd feet off the ground?
I think it's 30-something, but I'm not the architect of record, so I didn't design the
Well,
building.
I'm just asking. That's
Well, I can't answer. I would love to answer it, but unfortunately I
Okay.
can't.
I was just asking because I didn't see the downspouts, and I thought I'd looked at it pretty good. I didn't see the interior drains.
There will be both.
All right. And you're going to have some type of cover over the door, so if this stuff does fly off, somebody's not going to get necked or killed.
There's a large canopy that comes out.
Right. I
6 or
saw
8
the
feet.
front one, but what about the other doors? That's what I'm asking. I'm just asking a question, for safety.
No, there's two side doors on each side.
Yeah, the emergency.
The side doors are not under touch.
Right, no, I understand it, but I'm just asking if somebody was going out there or something, just, it's a freak accident, but it is a possibility. I'm just asking if you thought anything about that. And my final question is, and I know you're not the architect, any of that pavement porous, or is it all solid bituminous, and we're not going to use some of our buildings we had approved for before in the town, we had required porous pavement to water go through the pavement and in underneath?
We are not having any porous pavement. It's all going to be the standard impervious pavement. And typically, you do like to use the pervious pavement as a way to meet your water quality standards. We are fully meeting the water quality standards, so we don't need to use that
Right.
strategy.
No, I understand, I was just curious, that's all. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other commissioners? Any site plan questions, anything?
On site plan.
Traffic, safety, any other concerns?
Again, I brought it up, I think, almost all my questions have to do with the pedestrian safety there, and I'm still not comfortable. And I understand from the developer and the owner's perspective, it's somewhat hard to control, but yet there isn't a pedestrian issue there right now. Nobody walks there. We're definitely going to introduce that. And it's a problem for me because there is no way for anybody to leave that site safely, walking on the side of that street, and get to either the busway, which I'm assuming is where the majority of people are going to want to go, as the millenniums seem to not be buying cars these days and biking it and hiking it. God forbid they ride a bicycle on that road. You take your life in your hands. But I do see a substantial issue both west and east. East, I think, is a little simpler to accomplish, just because it's a much shorter distance. Although going west, there is a snow shelf, so there is the provisions to at least get a sidewalk in. DOT obviously would have to agree to it. Is their property. But again, I think that we're asking for trouble. Introducing, again, even if it's 10% of the families that live there, we're talking 25, 30 people that don't have vehicles, that don't have access to leave that property.
Okay, well, and our first answer is then they're probably not going to live there if they don't have a way to leave the property, and if they have some other arrangement.
And I understand, but what if they do? I don't think we can't, and I'll let you speak on it, but I don't think we can ignore the point that more than likely there will be people that live there that don't have transportation. They don't own their own car. And I guess if you need to make me feel a little bit more comfortable that somehow they'll be protected, and I don't see how you can do that, but I'm willing to listen. And I'll sit back.
Not that they won't have transportation, they won't have cars.
Cars, correct.
Now, so there are people who don't have cars who have transportation. There's a lot of different ways to get around in the world, including some ways that didn't exist several years ago. I guess I'm a little not confused, but I'm not quite sure. I thought we had agreed 2 or 3 meetings ago that the applicant is willing to work with both the state and the town of Newington, because none of us can do it individually. And if the commission wants to make a condition of approval, the applicant will work with the town and the state to achieve as soon as possible a pedestrian access to the busway or east into whatever part of town. We're willing to do that. We don't have the legal ability now as a condition of approval to say that we're going to install sidewalks east or west. We can't do that on our own. We can pledge our cooperation, and there'll be a financial piece to that for sure, but we can't do it ourselves. But if you want to impose a condition of approval requiring that cooperation, we're there.
So, yeah, my biggest concern was going towards a busway. Even though it's nice to have sidewalks the other way, I thought since this was geared towards the workforce, that they would walk towards a busway mainly.
Let's start with the easiest task on our plate. Yes.
Commissioner Camellia and then Woods.
Basically, Stop and Shop owns the property, correct?
Correct.
And Stop and Shop's at the other end of that walkway if there was one. Maybe you can, say.
Stop and
These are
Shop.
potential customers of Stop and Shop. Stop and Shop is in the plaza by the bus station.
Oh, okay.
Okay? They own this property.
Right.
They're trying to get the job done here through you. And you answered my question anyhow. That's what I was.
Okay.
You're gonna do your
Again,
due
we
diligence to
we
get
need
this done.
cooperation from others that we, now, Mr. Chairman, I should also say, if you think we can get an answer out of the state of Connecticut by the 24th of October, I can't promise that. Maybe October 24th of 2027, but, but what we can pledge
So
now
you're-
is our
you're-
cooperation.
If I take it correctly, you're willing to come up with a condition with the town planner that you would work with the two agencies and you would take on the financial burden of it once you got the approval from them.
I can't say we're going to agree to absorb the cost. I recognize that if you're going to extend sidewalks, there's going to be a cost involved, and that'll be part of the negotiation. For all I know, the state of Connecticut has a pot of money sitting there for sidewalks. I mean, the DOT right away does that every day. What I can pledge is our cooperation, because as Commissioner Camillo has just said, there's self-interest for everybody, including the town, including the entire town of Newington, in extending those sidewalks. We're willing to participate in that effort.
And I would imagine that would be a high priority of the finance companies too. I mean, there had to be a reason why they, either the finance or the state of Connecticut all of a sudden asked you to put in the elevators instead of no elevators, correct?
Correct.
So I would imagine that would be something else. The sidewalks, at least going to the busway, would be very important. I think it's a safety issue, and I appreciate the fact that you'll work with them to try to get it accomplished.
And I'll propose a condition, Mr. Minor, and I'm sure can come up with something.
Okay. Commissioner Woods?
Attorney Hollister, I'll go back and look, but again, I believe it was off the table. I do remember that you agreed to do them in front of your property, but I believe the discussion was that's as far as you'll go. I'll go back and check. And maybe I misunderstood.
We agreed to do the sidewalks on our property. I
Correct.
said we would cooperate beyond our property, but that's not something we can agree to do unilaterally, because it's not within our control.
I don't remember you saying that, but you might have.
I think if you look at the minutes of
Okay, I will.
September 12th, yeah.
Yes, Commissioner.
Attorney Hollister, I just want to call your attention. You do realize that there's Connecticut Fast Track stop at Alumni Road. So it would be probably also advantageous to try to work with the property owners to the east of that. Because it's a stop 144. There's a green sign hung up on a utility pole.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else? Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And through the chairman, Attorney Hollister. In the text amendments that the applicant has proposed, which I'm not too happy with anyway, but you mentioned that home occupations will be permitted with 3.33 and 3.44 as their guidelines. Now, these people that work from home may not have a car. So if there are going to be people working at home, whether it be workforce assisted or market level tenants, they are going to need sidewalks, east, west, or whatever. And while it's not a definite, I guess we'll find out something more about it on October 18th, but we might have a Hartford rail station right across the way. And so, I don't know who would be responsible for providing access, pedestrian access from 550 Cedar Street to there, but, that would be a huge safety problem. Thank you.
Don't you find that a little crazy, Commissioner Fox, that we have the leadership of the town that's thinking that there's too much traffic for this development, but they're pushing for a commuter parking lot right across the street? We've had long talks about it being somewhere else, and now out of the blue, the leadership is thinking that a commuter lot would be a good thing to have on industrial property, which our 2020 plan discourages. And what does that come with? Lots of housing. And they would exit out onto Maple Hill Avenue. So we'll see what the leadership thinks, but kind of crazy. You cry that there's too much traffic on the road for this development, but it's okay to put a commuter lot in.
I hope you're not calling me crazy, Commissioner, and I hope you're not calling our leadership crazy. But if I'm not mistaken, I really don't think 550 Cedar Street has anything to do with Connecticut Fast. Connection, a TOD type connection. I'm not sure, but I don't think it's really crazy to have planned that. I don't think this is just look, we might get housing, so let's put a railroad station there. Maybe just the opposite, but still, it's a possibility, and that's all I'm thinking about, crazy or not. That if the possibility is there, I would like to see, to make sure that residents can safely access the rail station. I did projects like this, although combat projects, in the service, and we always wanted to make sure of what was going around, going on around it. And, so this is where my thinking comes from. Thank you.
Mr. Sobieski, then Commissioner Woods.
Yes, if I went to the first one with the railroad station when I presented here, there's three options: do nothing. Option 2 was Cedar Street. Option 3 was the Francis Avenue area, which they really didn't want to do because they claimed they couldn't get their 300 cars in that parking area, even if they took 2 of the buildings. So this is why they were leaning more towards 550. I just want to bring that out so everybody understood that.
Commissioner Woods?
Was there any thought possibly given to communications with Connecticut Fast Track and developing like a cutout on the side of the road for a bus stop there so that there would be connectivity to the busway? Like they did it on Willard Avenue, on the north end of Willard Avenue, on both northbound and southbound lanes. There's a cutout, so the bus actually pulls out of the traffic lane, can safely put people on and off the bus.
It's a city bus you're talking about?
Well, yeah, city bus, fast track bus.
Fast track. School bus. I mean, school bus, even if it had a pull-out, would still have to have the lights flashing.
I actually, the school bus, I think that would probably be more dangerous if you put the school bus in there, because then the traffic's not going to stop. I'm talking about city buses. I'm talking about the pedestrians that will be leaving the complex to get down to the busway or to go east.
Dr. Moving bus stop from Alumni and Maple over to there.
No, adding a bus stop.
Oh, adding, okay.
They might be receptive to it.
If you're asking if we've talked about that, I don't think we have.
Anybody else? Town planner?
Well, I think there may be some ways to improve the site plan, which the applicants will certainly be able to do once it's constructed. And I know that there are still a few details with the school administration to work out as far as like a bus shelter, and maybe working with the parents of kids that will live in this apartment to try to prevent the parents from congesting at the driveway on rainy days, which parents tend to do. So there's opportunity remaining for the management of this apartment to work with the administration to make it a safer situation there. But having said that, just taking a broader look at the site plan, the town engineer has reviewed it with the applicant's engineer and is satisfied that the remaining issues can be addressed. So that's not an obstacle. You also have a brief memo from the town engineer. He's reviewed their environmental report, and he noted that it meets industry standards for this type of project. I don't have any outstanding issues as far as the site plan. I'm just trying to manage all the issues that other people have brought up so that the commission can make the right decision.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else from the commissioners, the applicant, you have anything else? We'll see you at our next meeting. Hopefully we get any unanswered questions answered. And
all right, so at the risk of oversimplifying, sidewalks and bus stop drop off and pickup. Okay.
Those were my two biggest concerns, and obviously some of the other commissioners have. So, very good. We'll see you at our next meeting. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Minor had suggested you might consider an earlier meeting, so then you'd be in a
At the
position-
next meeting, if we have to, we can always call a meeting before the 31st, so that we can get this resolved. Hopefully, everything comes back at the next meeting and we can close everything and come up with an answer for you. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep.
That ends the public portion of the agenda and new business. Going to the next item under new business is Newington Bridge Preserve. I'll turn it over to the town planner.
All right, as the commission recalls, at the last meeting, two weeks ago, the applicant, the developer, had his lab on site doing taking some test borings of the road at certain intervals, and we just this afternoon got the results back from the lab, and there's a copy of the report in the red folder when you sat down, and then there's a very brief email from the town engineer pointing out that these results are not good. These results indicate that the existing base of the road is not up to standards. And this is all new information, so I don't have a suggestion as to what the remedy would be, but clearly the developer is going to have to do something with the existing road base before he could put down the top coat that most of us were hoping that he would be able to do, but it turns out it's not going to be that simple. Also in the packet, just for your information, is an email from the president of the Homeowners Association, just to inform the commission that although some residents of the development have talked about the Homeowners Association being willing to, if the bond is called, to take over the project, that has not been voted on by the Homeowners Association, so that's not a sure thing. So I just wanted to make the commission aware of that. So hopefully at your next meeting, I will have a response from the developer as to what he now intends to do with this information. In fact, I'll ask him to come, but if he can't come, to at least give you an indication of what he intends to do about this.
Commissioner, comments, remarks on the findings of the road?
Mr. Chairman, to Vice Chairman Payne, do you think there's enough time to put a new base in?
There's plenty of time.
Okay.
Depends on how fast.
I'm sorry?
Depends on how fast you start.
Okay, well, that's what I was asking.
Right? Right,
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, it's just money.
Okay, thank you.
Pick up the money, there's time. The plants will be open till,
December.
Mid to late November, early December, depending on the weather.
Yep.
I think it's unfortunate, if I may.
Yeah,
Just
go
that
ahead.
it just seems like it's one of these things that everything is gonna continue to go bad. I was hoping that the reclaiming of it and turning it back in would give them the base that they need, but that's unfortunate.
This portion of the project was done under a different developer.
I realize that.
Unfortunately, this developer didn't do his due diligence to see if the road was the base was put in the right way. I don't know, what responsibility the old owner had, but it's now his responsibility. He bought the project out, so he has to fix it.
It's unfortunate for everybody involved.
You have concerns over the amount of money?
Yes, I do. For years, I've been telling you, we have enough money, not to worry. But there have been some mechanics liens filed, which the town attorney says do take precedence. in the amount of, in the $30,000 to $40,000 range. So there is not as much, the bottom line is there's not as much money today as there was 2 months ago because of this claim on some of that money.
Mr. Quinn, do you know the square footage of the road approximately? Do you?
No, I'm sorry.
The developer that originally did this, is he still doing stuff in town?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes, because those two names, the original developer, those names are known to us. They've been known to us for a long time as being a challenge to deal with.
Who was the
Well, I'd rather not say at this point, but I can talk to you later about that.
Okay.
But no, they don't do business in Newington at the moment.
Okay, we'll just have to wait and see what the response is from the developer, how he's gonna handle it. And if he could get it done this year. What do you think, Steve?
Again, I think there's more than enough time. Who makes the recommendation as to what needs to be done? Are we now waiting for the developer to come back to the town engineer as what his remediation plans will be, how to correct this? Or does our town engineer just reject it and say, no, the base wall has to come out and you have to start over?
Well, I think it'll start with the developer coming up with a proposal. And if the town engineer thinks that that's acceptable, he'll recommend to the commission to let him proceed. If the town engineer doesn't agree with that proposal, then it might come back to this commission to make a decision as to what to do with the bond money.
I don't even know if you have to come back to this commission. It'd be between the staff and the town engineer. I would imagine the town engineer is going to recommend taking out the 6 inches of soil and put 6 inches of virgin processed material in there, and then do another compaction test.
Right. Oh, I didn't mean to come back to the commission for a decision as to what the best process was. I meant to make a decision about calling the bond.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Didn't our attorney say that could be called at any time? He wouldn't have to come back to us?
Well, you have to do it. The commission needs to
Still
call
has
the
to come
bond
back to us to call it.
to make the decision. Right.
Any other comments or questions on this issue? Okay, we'll just leave it on the agenda.
Right. And as soon as I learn anything, I'll share it with the commissioners.
Okay, great. Okay, that brings us into old business. There's an item that we moved to old business. Can you make a motion? Item C in the front.
I'll make a motion that we approve petition 38-18 special permit, section 3.2.1, Church of Place of Worship at 2175 Berlin Turnpike, IBNP, One Nation in Christ, applicant, Kidco Property LLC, owner Ruben Ascensus, 727 Maple Street, Weathersfield, contact with, are we doing for 1 year, or do we normally have conditions on it, with no conditions?
I would recommend no conditions.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, you're all set. Talk to the planner about the sign. Yes, sir. Okay. Petitions for public hearing scheduling, you want to just go over those real quickly, Mr. Minor?
Yes. Right.
Give the commission an idea where
Right.
they are and what they are.
Okay, the first one, 43-18. This is the California Sushi. They would like to be able to apply for a liquor license, and now that the commission has eliminated the separation requirement for restaurants in shopping centers, there's no impediment to them going forward. So I recommend scheduling the hearing for your next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, the next item, 48-18. This is an application to amend the alcohol regulations, going even further. Mr. Rasconi is the gentleman who will be managing the artichoke, there's another word in there, the pizza restaurant. And he came to his awareness that because he is less than 500 feet from the Mexican restaurant to the north, the regulations don't allow him to have liquor at his restaurant because in Newington, we require a minimum distance between all restaurants. You amended the regulations a few months ago to allow restaurants in shopping centers to be next to each other, but that was a very targeted amendment. It didn't provide relief to other restaurants in town. So now we have a would-be restaurant operator who would like you to eliminate the separation requirement completely for all restaurants. And he paid his application fee, so I recommend that the hearing be scheduled at the next available meeting, which is your first meeting in November, because I need to send it to CROG for 30 days prior. And it's in your packet if you want to look at it, but it's very simple. He just wants to eliminate the requirement that there be a distance between all restaurants in Newington.
Okay.
And then the third application is Montana Nights. They've come back again. This time is for a freestanding sign out in front of their building. And the owner put together a sketch drawn by himself to represent what the sign would look like.
Has the property there, they met all the requirements of the site plan, everything done?
Yes, the owner finally paved grassed and seeded the area where there had been pavement. I haven't been out to check some of the other things, but before Mr. D'Amato left, I believe that was one of the things that he inspected to make sure all the conditions had been complied with.
Okay.
Okay.
All righty, that takes.
I have a question, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. On that last petition, is Merle McKenzie the owner of the property?
No.
Or-
No.
So can he apply for a freestanding sign?
Yes, he can apply for it. The application needs the signature of Joe Sulo, and I believe it does have Mr. Sulo's signature. If not, then this just came in like a day or so ago, so I'll make sure that we do have the owner's signature on it to indicate his permission.
Okay.
That's why we always have an owner sign to indicate his permission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, communications, any communications, Craig?
I do not have any.
Stanley, all set?
No, I sent the CROG communications to everybody the other day.
Yep. Public participation, anyone wishing to speak at this time? Come forward, state your name and address for the record. Give me a second, set this tape. Okay.
John Bashan, 56 Maple Hill. I was just curious, is there going to be a public hearing on the site plan for 550 Cedar Street? Because a lot of discussion came up, and I would have liked to address it. And right on your agenda, it says no discussing agenda items. So those same safety issues came up, and I wanted to speak to them.
Issues are not open to the public.
Never?
If you have any other concerns, you had an opportunity during the public participation of the other applications to mention anything, and the public hearing is still open for our next meeting, so your concerns can be brought at our next meeting.
Yeah, I was a little concerned about that what we were actually speaking to the whole time. So basically, we're speaking to the zone change, the map amendment, and the site plan all at the same time, when it's during that public hearing.
Some of the site plan issues came up during the public participation, so that's why that was there. But normally, when the commission talks about the site plan, it's not under a public hearing. Okay, if that helps you.
Well, I had serious concerns, but I don't want to go and say something that I'm not supposed to, but about their ideas of the sidewalk. So when is the next meeting, I'm sorry?
24th.
24th of October.
October 24th.
2 weeks from tonight?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak at this time? Come forward, state your name and address. Seeing none, town planners report.
Okay, a couple of items for the commission action. The first is a performance bond release for Harvest Ridge. This is that rental project that was constructed by Carrier on Deming Road. It's been pretty much complete for quite a while, and the developer just recently asked to have the bond released. It's $76,000 cash bond. The one issue, though, and I mentioned it in my memo to you, when the sidewalks were poured a number of years ago, some kid on his bike drove by and rode his bike through the wet cement, wrote his initials on several panels, The police were able to find him because he'd written his name on it, and the mother was contacted. And there was a discussion between the kid's mother and Carrier about her paying to have those vandalized panels replaced at her expense. Apparently, she was of modest means, and so between the then town engineer and the developer, the decision was made to leave them as they are. Now, I called, excuse me, I called Chris Greenlaw, the former town engineer, the other day, to confirm that it had been his recommendation at that time that not to make Carrier replace the panels. And Chris said, yes, that was in fact his conclusion. And he hastened to say that part of the reason he did not feel, or he did not want to recommend that Carrier be forced to replace those panels, was because Carrier had done such an excellent job in all of the regards with this project. They'd just been excellent to work with. They'd done a high quality project. And so his recommendation at that time, in conversations between him and the developer, was not to make Carrier replace those panels. So that's the situation. If you release the bond, then that's the end of it. That's not to say that the homeowners association of that development might not at some point decide themselves that they would like to have a nicer sidewalk. Oh, I also want to mention that Greenlaw pointed out that although the panels were vandalized, there's nothing obscene and nothing profane. It's just the kids' initials and the bike tread in there. And Carrier at the time did what they could to try to minimize the appearance of it. They tried to buff it out to some extent. I don't know if anything can be poured into it. If there is, it probably wouldn't last very long anyway. But I suppose that is an option for the commission to tell Carrier to look into.
Okay, so what do you?
So my recommendation is to release the bond.
When are you doing that, putting that on the agenda?
It's on the agenda now, and there was a draft motion in your folder when you came in. A draft motion for that one and for the other bond release that I'll be talking about in a minute.
Someone make the motion and we'll discuss the sidewalks after the motion is made.
It was one of the last pieces of paper in the folder.
Move to Harvest Village, right?
Yes.
I move to release the $76,000 bond at 197 Deming Street, Harvest Village.
Second. Motion made and second. Now discussion. Does the commission want to pursue the fixing of the sidewalks or not? Commissioner Fox?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the people at the development there don't seem to have any problem with it, so why should we? Simple as that. As long as there's no safety hazard.
Commissioner?
I am in favor of what Commissioner Fox said. As long as there's no safety hazard, we should release it.
Anyone else?
Yes, sir, I'd like to see it replaced, but I don't really want to step in the middle of this, but I'm surprised that Carrier just didn't replace it. I mean, we're not talking a large sum of money here. I mean,
how many panels is it?
Is it two panels?
It's about 4 or 6. I think.
Oh, so the bike went a little further.
Yeah. I think because of the way it evolved, because there was some thought about the kid's mother paying for it, and by the time it was decided that no, she can't pay for it, they had demobilized, and it would no longer been a simple thing to do, whereas it would have been if they had just bit the bullet at the outset.
I will share with this. There is no repair that can be made.
Yeah, there's
nothing that will last. You can make a repair.
There is material that you could bond with it and parge over it. Will it fail 5-6 years down the road? Yes, it'll be a maintenance item for them, but there is stuff that you could use.
And we haven't heard from the association there that people want it fixed.
They haven't complained to the town that I know of.
I'll support it. I'm not.
Okay, motion made and already discussed. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next item.
Okay, next item is another bond release. This is for that stretch of road, Shady Hill Lane, that was part of a 4-lot subdivision that was approved, I think a couple of years before I got here, and is now finally finished. The developer is in the process of having it taken as a town road. In fact, it'll be coming to you. There will be an 8-24 coming to you at your next meeting from the town council to recommend taking it as a town road. But as a separate step in the process, the developer has asked for you to release his performance bond, which he's going to then immediately turn into a maintenance bond, so it's not as if he's actually taking the money and going anywhere, but it will be put into a different account, in a sense, in the town. But you do have to release it before he can make it into a maintenance bond.
The maintenance bond is for the town?
Yes.
And if the town accepts this road before the winter season starts, then he gets his money out of that?
No. Once the town accepts the road, this money is held for 12 months, for a year. And
Okay,
then
in
if
case there's any
defects-
failures.
Right.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. All right.
And again, there's a draft motion in the folder.
I can't find that one.
Oh, it's on the flip side of the first one.
Yeah. You're conserving.
Try.
Want me to read it, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, please.
I move to release the $6,075 performance bond at Shady Hill Lane. Harvest, but it's not Harvest Ridge, right? Just, we didn't do a full, cut and copy. We copied a little too much.
Oh, that's possible.
Yeah. So I'll end at Shady Lane.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made, second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next item.
Okay, at the last meeting, the commission asked me to get started on the text amendment to, in a sense, turn the clock back on Newington's motor vehicle regulations. So in the packet that was mailed to you, I reproduced what the rules were back before the changes were made, so you have them. I then today received an email from the town attorney recommending one little tweak, which is that, and I don't have it in front of me, but that it was literally the last piece of paper in the folder when you came in. Thank you. Thank you. The town attorney is recommending that section 6.11.5, that it read no portion of any building or structure, rather than the word use, that no building or structure shall be within 50 feet of a residential zone. And he's recommending that you make the little change before we go forward with the public hearing.
He said, now it is the property line.
No, now it reads, no portion of any use shall be within 50 feet of a residential zone.
In the existing, no,
Right.
doesn't it, in the old regulations,
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. No portion of any use related to, shall be within 50 feet. The town attorney is recommending it be changed to no portion of any building or structure related to a motor vehicle.
thank you.
I'd rather see it to, that the lot line.
Lot line, and I,
Not even the structure, because there could be activity on the lot in some other area where.
Well, I know he's making this recommendation in the context of the lawsuit that's being settled.
what's he gonna dictate our regulation for us, though?
No,
I
he's
mean-
making a recommendation.
I understand that, but the crux of that, the problems that we've had with that regulations, it's all has to do with how close it is to a residential property. So do you want to, so that's the whole, that's what the commission's going to talk about is the closeness of that type of use to a residential property. Whether 50 feet that he's recommending, or 100 feet, or 300 feet, I don't know what the commission's
Well,
going to
it's currently 50 feet, but I can tell you that his reason for recommending, well, your reason for doing all this is to eliminate all the nonconformities that were created by your predecessors a few years ago. This would create a regulation that's even more liberal and therefore there'd be even less potential for nonconformities to continue, which resulted from the changes that this commission made a few years ago. Whatever you go to a hearing on isn't necessarily what gets approved. What you adopt will be what you will adopt. The town attorney is just suggesting that this is what you lead off with, but you can certainly change it as a result of public hearings and further thought.
Okay, put this on the agenda for discussion for the, I don't know, next meeting, or what do we got? What do we got? Are we tired? You have too much stuff on?
No, there's not,
Okay,
not
then
very
put
much.
it on for discussion and we'll go over item by item on it as a start.
And since we're talking about putting things on,
well, let me wrap this up. Okay, so then the commission does not want it to go to you're not ready for me to send it to CROG because
We haven't come up with any regulation. We said that we were gonna look at the 2007 and use that as a guideline and then make
Yeah, we're gonna
modifications to it.
Right, okay.
And
We're
tweak
gonna
it.
tweak it. When we're tweaked it,
Oh,
then you
okay.
send that, you send the final thing to CROG.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Did we all set with that, guys? Yep. All right? Okay.
When we had our special meeting for the text amendment for marijuana and the approval of the regulations, there's a distance. Can we bring that back and talk about that at the next meeting?
Sure.
In what context, Michael?
Well, I believe it was within 400 feet or 100 feet. I wasn't sure what it was, but we want to make sure that they meet it for what we approved.
Oh, well, okay, I don't think there's any question that the change that was made addressed the needs of that particular medical marijuana operator. But I think your point is that maybe the regulations need to be looked at in other ways also.
When we, when you were
Didn't
on
you
vac-
approve, wasn't that approved?
It was approved, but I don't think they met the regulations because of the distance. Mike D'Amato, when he took your place while you were on vacation, said that he had met with John Kelly originally, and he had pointed out that where the driveway property line was on Prospect was too close to the development across the street. And he knew that, and he still left it the same way.
All right, well, I can certainly revisit it,
What
but
did you approve as the distance requirements? Do you remember, Mr. Fox?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chair. I think I do, because I made the motion. And, I forgot a couple of things. But if I remember correctly, the new regulation had no minimum limits between
Is that a fact?
That's how I remember it.
between a
Remember it also.
dispensary and whatever. Nor did it have any limits between two dispensaries. So if you want to look at some other parts,
Let's look at
that'd
that
be cool.
anyhow.
Sure.
This is a distance requirement between a dispensary and a residential property.
Correct.
Did you eliminate that requirement
Yes.
altogether, or did
Yes,
you
we did.
reduce it down to 100 feet?
No, I think it was eliminated completely.
No, it was eliminated completely.
We want to just check that.
I'll check.
And then that'll answer his question, because he,
And I think what we all agreed on, Mr. Chairman, was that we needed to bring it back and change it. So, I guess cherry pick might be the wrong word, but it was obviously designed so, and as an applicant is only going to write his text amendment, so it allows him to do what he wants to do. Now I think it's time to go back and look at that amendment and change it from what it was
okay.
to what it should be, or what we think it should
Okay.
be, or needs to be.
Let's do the auto thing first, and then
Yeah, I don't think they're standing in line here.
you want to make sure that we don't let that go by. Once we're finished with the auto, I think that's the next one that we should tackle.
Okay, all right, I'll make a note of that.
Okay?
Okay, and then finally, I'll bring you up to date on the Assistant Town Planner / CEO vacancy. We had interviews last week, and we had second interviews earlier this week, and the town manager and I have identified a very likely candidate, and I believe that the manager will be making an offer to that person, or would have made an offer to that person this afternoon, so hopefully, and that person will need to give 2 weeks' notice where they currently are, so it'll be a few weeks, but it's looking like we'll have someone new, maybe by the end of the month even.
Good. Okay, so if he will be on for the next meeting, you think?
Probably not, but definitely by the first meeting in November.
Okay, and the first meeting in November, we want to have the opportunity for the commission to discuss what we expect from them. So we'd want it on the agenda, as an agenda item.
Yep.
We want to start off on the right foot with them. Or her.
It's a her. Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's good.
Yep. Okay.
Anything else?
And that's all I have.
Okay, remarks by commissioners? Nothing? Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
On Spooky Town,
Yeah,
as you know, I'm not one to get too excited about the signage. But I think this commission worked very hard to try to be extremely accommodating with that applicant when they came in. And pretty much, they're kind of flipping their nose at us, from what I could see on that building. I mean, I try not to let it bother me, this sign thing, but, I mean, the sign was supposed to, actually was 4 foot when they brought it in. They were gonna shrink it to 3 because it was over the square footage. I think it's 10 or 12 in height, and it's probably 40 feet long. I guess it's a little frustrating to me that someone comes in here, takes the time to do it, and basically just ignores the agreement that we made and puts up what they want. And in this particular case, by the time we could get it down, it's over. But
I think you gotta, when these temporary signs and temporary businesses come in, I think you gotta take a harder look at them, and as a commission, we gotta look at it. Just like we did with the fireworks one on New Britain Avenue, you just said no, that's all. Can't do it.
yeah. And then, if I may,
It's not like these are permanent things, they're there for a couple of months, we ain't making any tax money, we're not, it's,
and like Rizzo's tent, I mean, that's kind of like a neon billboard right now with all the signage that's on that tent. The tent is a sign.
It's down now.
It came down? Yeah, and then I realize that's a very short period of time.
Well, even that property there, I don't know if I don't think we originally allowed it to have so many extra signs on it. And so.
Which one's
I would,
that?
on the Rizzo one, so, there again, we approved it based on what they were originally did a year ago. And, I would agree with Commissioner Woods and the chairman that, maybe, these have to come in front of us all the time.
like on this, on the Rizzo one, this guy, if I was involved in that, I would have, I wasn't here at the time. If I was, I would have insisted that he show us exactly what he's doing, because he has a tendency to do more than what he's allowed to do. He showed that in his past performances, trying to sneak extra stuff in. He's done it before, and we caught him. So that's one that, the next time he comes in, we should take a closer look, because he had 3 signs on the property.
Again, in all fairness to the Rizzo applicant, that the sign, or the tent that he put up was the tent that we approved.
Yeah.
We just didn't see the picture of all the sides of it with all the signage all the way around
Yeah, but
it.
then he had a waving sign,
Yeah.
and then a Rizzo
Yeah.
sign, and, Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, to the planner, do you know what's going on with Chick-fil-A? It doesn't seem to be too much activity up there.
No, I haven't heard anything from them.
They've been going pretty good. They got the floors poured, all the
Oh, okay.
plumbing is in.
Steel tape
Today they were, the structural steel was delivered.
Oh, okay. I was out of town this past week, so.
Yeah, they're moving, I think they're starting to move real good. There's a lot of activity, and there's a lot of people, a lot of workers on site, a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's moving pretty good. Anything else, commissioners? Any other comments? There's no executive session tonight.
No, I believe there is.
There is?
Well, I put it on the agenda because I thought the town attorney might have some information for you regarding the.
Not here, is he?
Let me see if he's across the hall. Okay, I guess he does not have anything to tell you.
It'd be nice if he told you whether he was coming or not.
Well, I put it on the agenda because I thought it was the standing item
Gotta
until.
stay on the agenda
Right.
until we get some of those.
Right,
couple
and
issues
although I've had
resolved.
several conversations with him these past couple of days, we haven't talked about this specifically, so.
Okay. And motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Aye, 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 aye.
Very good.